Hello everyone, this is Abhishek Saraf. I have secured All India Rank 8 in UPSC's Civil Service Exam of 2019. This talk is part of the Unheard series of Civils Daily IAS. In this talk, we will be covering my strategy to clear the prelims, to prepare for the prelims and attempt the exam. So without much further ado, let's begin. Then I mentioned that for attempting the paper, for clearing the prelims, the optimum attempt is 85 to 90 questions. That is a given. Most of the year it happens that way. You attempt 85 to 90 questions, you get 20 questions wrong, 65 are correct, you get 59 effectively right, you get 118 marks. Something like that. You attempt 90 questions, 20 are wrong or 18 are wrong, 72 are correct, you get 66 correct, 132 marks. Something like that, some calculation like that. So the idea is that attempt 85 to 90 questions. Then in 3 iterations, I used to solve the paper, at least 3 iterations. What is the purpose of each iteration? It is very important. Don't try to solve question number 1 to 100 in one go. That okay, I'm starting from question number 1, I'll end up at question number 100. This will be one round from question number 1 to 100 and I'll be done with the paper when I reach the question number 100. No, this is not how I solve the paper, and I would suggest that 3 iteration strategy is quite helpful. In the first iteration, the purpose will be 3 things. What you will do is you will mark the questions that you are 100% sure of. You will mark or strike out the question that you don't know and you don't want to attend in the exam. You just don't know. You are confused between 3 options. You don't even realize which option is correct, or you are confused between all the 4 options. This is the question. Just strike it out like this. You will not see that question again in the exam. You will not waste your time considering reading that question in the exam. That is how I did so. And then mark the questions that you are partially sure of. There is a question. There's ABCD options. Then you are partially sure of that. You are confused between B and C option. So what I did was that I wrote this: doubt left, doubtful left, and then I wrote B, C. These 2 options I wrote. That I'm doubtful between B and C. I left this question for now to be reviewed later. So the one question that I was sure of, I would mark. The one question that I was absolutely unsure of, I would strike out. The one question that was doubtful for me, I wanted to leave it to review later, I would write this thing. Or you can just write L, left, and B and C, those 2 doubtful options. This is the purpose of the first iteration. First iteration has to end in 70 to 75 minutes. And believe you me, by mechanically practicing test papers on and on and on, you can completely become machine-like in doing these things. For me, it happened that at the end of 60 minutes, I used to be at question number 80. At 70 to 75 minutes, the first iteration would be over. Next iteration would take 30 to 35 minutes. In this first iteration, I would attempt 50 to 55 questions. That would be done at the end of 70 to 75 minutes. Now I need to attempt 30 to 35 more questions. That would happen around 30 questions, or 25 to 30 questions would be attempted in the second iteration. See, in the first iteration, at the end of 75 minutes, I would attempt 50 to 55 questions. 30 to 35 questions are left to be attempted. In the second iteration, that would run for 25 to 30 minutes, or even 35 minutes sometimes. I would attempt 35 to 25 questions. So I would get close to 80 questions. Now I am left with the pressure of attempting just 10 to 12 questions, or maybe less questions, in just 10 to 12 minutes. That is how 3 iterations for me went. First iteration, questions that you are sure of, questions that you absolutely don't want to see again in the exam, questions that you are doubtful. That will take 70 to 75 minutes. Then in the second iteration, you will review these questions that you marked, that you are partially sure, that you were 50% sure between 2 options. Second iteration, solve the questions that you are partially sure of, 25 to 30 questions. Now there is no basic science to it. It is just heuristic thing. But what happened to me is that with enough number of test papers, I was able to guess my level of surety that okay, in this question I'm 50-50. I'm just confused between these 2 options. Right now I might mark option A, but tomorrow if this question appears in front of me, I might mark option C. just not sure. That happened. Sometimes in some questions I was like, I can vaguely recall that the option is B, but I'm not absolutely sure. Maybe it is C, but I'm more inclined towards this. This kind of thing develops, that I'm maybe 70-30% sure. In some question I'm just 50-50% sure. So this kind of thing develops. So in the first iteration, don't try to shift gears of your brain from 100% surety to 70-30% surety. Just let your brain decide that I'm not 100% sure, then I'll see this question later. Not to wonder about it now, not to ponder about it now. Just let your brain work in stages. Let your brain decide, okay, I'm 100% sure, I'm 100% not sure, I'm not 100% sure, or I'm absolutely confused. Just let your brain decide these three things in the first iteration. In the second iteration, let it do partial analysis. Also, sometimes it happens that you might be able to recall some factoid, something clicks in your brain after 10 minutes, after you have read this question that you are not sure of, and then you are able to recall things. It happens. So what happens is that doing from first to second iteration gives your subconscious brain, gives your latent memory to come into effect, and you recall something or the other that enables you to solve this 70-30% surety question or 50-50% surety question as well. So give your brain some time. If you are doing it in just one iteration, then you are not giving your brain time to recall this latent factual knowledge, hidden knowledge that might come in handy. That is why I advise you to solve the paper in 2 to 3 iterations. I use 3 iterations. Let your brain work for the questions that it is 100% sure of in the first iteration. Don't tax your brain too much. Just decide that, okay, I'm sure, I'm absolutely unsure, not want to see this question again, and I'm partially sure. Just these 3 things. In the second iteration, give your brain some time to decide these things, that it is sure, it is not sure. That is why you have to read 100 questions in 75 minutes in the first iteration. In the second iteration, 25 to 30 questions in 25 to 30 minutes. You are giving your brain some time, and these are the questions over which you have already given first thought. So per question you are increasing the time. Why? Because you are not absolutely sure in those questions. But that is the beauty of separating your questions into multiple iterations, so that your brain is able to switch gears from 100% surety to partial surety. It is able to exercise its latent memory, subconscious memory, or something that you might have heard from someone, read somewhere. Maybe some elimination might click into your brain when you are attempting some other question. It has happened with me in test papers that I was attempting one question, I wasn't sure. I ended up with 70-30% surety. But when I was attempting some subsequent question, something clicked in my brain from reading the question of that I was able to recall that, oh, no. The answer of that previous question was this or this. This happens. So that is why give your brain some time. Don't make the decision of partially sure questions right away. Just mark them that I am partially sure and move on. Don't decide the answer in partially sure questions in the first iteration. Give your brain some time. That is the whole point. And then if you are not able to reach the benchmark of 85 to 90 questions, then you go for the third iteration. 5-6 questions are left, 10 questions are left at max in third iteration. Now the question arises that, okay, so I'm supposed to keep counting the questions. No, it is not supposed, you are not supposed to keep counting all the questions. You just need to count the crosses. In the first iteration, you mark certain questions as crossed. In the second iteration, you are just not able to realize that whether it is 50-50% surety, 60-40% surety, whether you should attempt it or not. Okay, so you marked it as a cross there also. You don't need to count all the bubbles you have filled, you just need to count the crosses. And you will know how many questions you have not attempted right now. It might come as 21. There are 21 crosses in my paper. So I need to attempt at least 6 questions more. Right? Or there is just 16 crosses in my paper. So I need to attempt at least 1 question more. Just count the crosses, don't count the bubbles. That is what I did. Partially sure questions, strike off not sure questions, mark 100% sure questions. Second iteration, partially sure questions. Third iteration, if needed. Then there is question arises that, okay, I have marked 55 questions. Now I have to get to 85 questions. I have surety levels varying from 50-50 to 90-10 in a bunch of questions. So how do I get from 55 to 85? And mind you, you will know not more than 50 questions with 100% surety. Still, you have to attempt 85 questions. So what will you do with that? Every person who is scoring high in prelims is making guesses, but they are making educated guesses. You have to learn the tricks of eliminations, the Tikram tricks that have been emphasized in several videos by Civils Daily. The first time I read those things was when an article was written by Dr. V on Civils Daily, maybe 3-4 years ago. And let me emphasize on it more, a little bit from my background. I wrote 2015 prelims. I attempted only 67 questions, ended up with 92 marks, just 92 marks. And the cutoff was about 108 marks. So I missed the prelims by 16 marks. That is why I say it is not a matter of luck. When I'm missing the prelims by 16 marks, it is not a matter of luck. When I'm clearing it by 33 marks, again, it is not a matter of luck. Point being that if you attempt as little as 67 questions, 70 questions, 65, 60 questions, then you are bound to get some questions wrong, and then your negative score will shoot high. So you have to attempt about 85 to 90 questions, and you have to develop a knack of attempting those 85 to 90 questions in the tests. Don't try to explain or justify to yourself that I will attempt 90 questions even though I'm attempting 65 questions only in the test paper. I'll attempt 90 questions in the prelims, that's okay, UPSC prelims, but I'm attempting only 65 questions right now. Don't try to justify this to yourself. Develop the knack of attempting 85 to 90 questions in the test papers itself. So how do you do that? Why do I say it is a knack? Because you have to make educated guesses based on your knowledge base. You have to make guesses. You have to make elimination. You have to eliminate some option. You might not be able to figure out which option is the final answer. But you might be able to figure out that no, this is probably not the answer for this XYZ logic. These things are called elimination tricks, and these are the things what Dr. V. He got selected for IS maybe 3-4 years ago. I'm not able to recall the year, but he got selected for IS and he wrote an article called Tikrams on Civils Daily. And that was just after the time I failed 2015 prelims. That is when I realized that, okay, what I'm doing wrong is attempting 67 questions. That was a manifestation of my limited knowledge base as it is. But the point is that you have to clear prelims, you have to attempt 85 questions. How do you go from here to here? You use the elimination techniques. Foundation for me was led by Dr. V. Read questions very carefully. That is the first basic thing. Sometimes something click in your brain. Sometimes there might be one point that contradicts with the other option. Sometimes UPSC might give you an intimidating looking set of statements, and you have to see whether 1, 2 is correct, 1, 3 is correct, 1, 4 is correct, 1, 2, 3 is correct, or something like that. But what might happen is that one statement, suppose statement 1, is part of all the options A, B, C, D. It is part of all the options, and obviously it is correct. One of them is the answer, obviously it is correct. It might happen in the reverse way as well. This one statement is a part of 3 options. Statement 2 is a part of 3 options. And then whatever permutation combination it is there, it does not matter. But then there are 4 statements that you need to find out which of them are correct. One statement is a part of 3 options. This statement is wrong. So you don't need to know whether 1, 2, 3 are correct or 1, 3, 4 are correct or not. This statement is wrong. This is a part of 3 options. So obviously this is the answer. These are the things that you need to be aware of. You might be intimidated that, okay, I don't even know if 3 and 4 are correct or not. So how do I attempt? And you might end up leaving the question. No. Read the complete question from first word to the last word. However intimidating it looks, read the first complete question in the first iteration, read every question completely. What might happen is that UPSC might be judging you on only this point. They don't care whether you know 1, 3 or 4 are correct or not. They might be judging you on your knowledge of only this point by arranging the options in such a way. So, read the questions carefully. Then there is internal consistency. What I mean by that is, suppose there are 4 statements like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. But you realize that, okay, if 2 is correct, then definitely 3 is not correct. Sometimes statements are arranged in such a way. If 2 is correct, then definitely, absolutely, for sure, 3 cannot be correct. Then whenever 2, 3 appear together in the options, you know that they are wrong. What I say is that if 2 is correct, 3 is not correct, and in option 1, 2, 3 is given. In option 2, 1, 2, 3 is given. In option 3, 2 is given, and in option 4, 1, 3 is given. So if you are able to figure out that, okay, if 2 is correct, 3 cannot be correct, then 2 options are eliminated as it is. And some question which you might not have attempted has become a partial surety question. You might be able to recall something and might mark it correctly. So read the options carefully, read the options completely. Then use logic. Correlate current affairs with the static knowledge. For example, if there's a question regarding, suppose, missiles, and it is discussing about the range of missiles, and you know that intercontinental missiles, they are ballistic missiles, they follow a trajectory of a satellite, and then it says that, okay, the height of the trajectory it is taking, the height it is taking is mentioned as a wrong figure. You know that if it is going to follow the trajectory of a satellite, then obviously the maximum altitude it achieves, it is going to be quite high. And if suppose it is written that the maximum altitude it achieves is only 5 kilometers, so that is obviously wrong. So what I am saying is that there might be an intimidating looking question that, okay, it is such a factual knowledge, how am I supposed to know that 5 kilometer, 10 kilometer, 20 kilometer, what is the maximum altitude it achieves? But it is an ICBM, so it is going to achieve a very high altitude. So that is how I am saying that you correlate your current affairs about ICBM with the static knowledge that what is the trajectory they follow. Then keep an eye out for extreme statements. It is a very standard way. The statements like only, always, also, drastically, completely. These statements reduce the space available for UPSC. Prove them correct. There might always be an exception. For example, in science and technology questions, there might be a research paper which proves this statement all or always wrong. And UPSC paper is being set by generalists, not specific experts. So they will always refrain from using statements like this which are correct. Why? Some exception, some theory, some claim proves that assertion wrong. So whenever you see such extreme words, you should become immediately aware. That is why I said read every question very, very, very carefully. If this word appears, then you should become aware, oh, this option is probably wrong. And that might help you in elimination. That option, statement 2 has this option. Statement 2 is probably wrong. Most likely it is wrong. And statement 2 has been mentioned in every option, that which of the following statements are correct. Every option but one option. So you can make a very educated and very safe guess that statement 2 is wrong. Statement 2 is mentioned in almost every option except for one. So the one in which it is not mentioned is the correct answer. That is how you make educated guesses. And the more you read, the more your knowledge base increases, the guesses become more and more likely to be correct. The corollary is that generalistic statements in science and technology questions are generally correct. Why? Suppose a question appears that XYZ use of nanotechnology. Nanotechnology can be used for XYZ purpose also. Now, can be used. It is most widely used is not the keyword, can be used. Some research paper somewhere might have proposed that. So, this generalistic broad-based statement, these generally are correct in UPSC. So, that is the kind of techniques you can develop. And I mentioned that initiation was by Dr. V in Tikrams. Then several videos of Civils Daily I have followed and I have shared them on my own Facebook page regarding how elimination can be done. And I use them multiple times to increase my number of attempts from 85 to 55 to 85. Then this is a very silly mistake that has happened with almost everyone. That, oh, the question wanted incorrect, I marked the correct ones. And UPSC is tricky enough, UPSC is cunning enough to have an option of the correct statements as well. For example, there are 4 statements and the keyword is incorrect. Suppose these 2 statements are incorrect. So 1 and 4 is correct. UPSC will always have an option 1 and 4. What will happen is that you will misread this as correct, figure out that these 2 are correct and mark this answer. So how do I avoid that? First point is very obvious, keep an eye out. And UPSC is generous enough that way. These questions, when they come, this word is in bold, this word is in bold. Still if you are not paying attention, you might mark them wrongly. What happens is that sometimes we get confused that we first read whether it is incorrect or correct, But when I was marking the option, it slipped out of my brain. I had done this thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I had done this and this. I had done ticks. I had marked ticks. Now these ticks were supposed to represent that this statement is incorrect because the keyword was incorrect. But I had done this because these were the correct answers in this question. Statement was incorrect, keyword was incorrect. This is the correct answer. These two statements are incorrect. When I read the options, I figured out that this is incorrect. I marked the tick, and when these statements, and when I read the options A, B, C, D, it slipped out of my brain in hurry that I was supposed to mark the incorrect ones. I thought that I marked the tick, so this is the correct ones, and I marked 1 and 4, 1 and 3. So to avoid this, I developed a system. What I did was, when I was reading the statement, regardless of whatever the keyword is, I would not mark a tick or something like that. I would mark true or false. There is no doubt. There is no doubt or confusion that can happen with a tick. Tick might be the answer, tick might be the correct statement. But here it is true. When I have written T in front of a statement, it means that it is correct statement. It is true statement. I don't care whether it is the correct answer or not. I just care it is the correct statement. Same goes with false. It is a wrong statement. Whether or not it will be a part of my answer, that remains to be seen. What I did was that wrote things like this in front of every option, every statement. Then I went, before looking at the options, I went and reviewed the keyword again. True, false, true, whatever it is, reviewed the keyword again. Picked out, if it is incorrect, picked out these 3 and they became my answer. So the change that I brought was that instead of doing this and getting confused that whether the statement is incorrect or whether it is the answer, it is the correct answer or not. Getting confused between this, I used true, false, and reviewed the keyword again before marking the answer. Whenever I am doing this true, false, before I read the option, I review the keyword again. Then it is $1 million question, when to fill the bubbles. Some people fill the bubbles right away, A, B, C, D. It is like this. So they will read a question, fill the bubble. Okay, and they will fill it with a pen right away. This was question number 10. Now I am attempting question number 71. What happened is that some text in question number 71 triggered something in my brain, and I recalled that, oh no, the question that I filled here, the option that I filled here is wrong. It happens sometimes. Even though you were at that point of time sure, but some trigger happened in your brain and you realize it is wrong. But now what to do? You have already filled the bubble. Some people carry a whitener. They will overwrite it, but that is not advisable. Avoid it as much as possible. Don't try to do things like that. What I did was that you can't leave. I did not fill all the bubbles simultaneously. I did not leave the bubbles to be filled in the last 5 minutes before the exam. If you leave it that way, what might happen is that it is question number 21, 22, 23. You decided not to attempt question number 22. You struck it off during your first iteration. But when you are filling the bubbles, you read or marked or picked up the options wrongly. You forgot to skip question number 23. You forgot to skip question number 22. You marked till 21 correctly. You were supposed to mark from 23, but you forgot to skip it, and you marked question number 23's answer in question number 22, and subsequently 11 questions went wrong that way. And there goes your prelims. So in such a procedural mistake, 1 year is lost. So my strategy here was that you will mark them simultaneously, but with a pencil. In the first iteration, I am solving question number 21. I marked them with a pen. I marked the correct answer with a pencil. 24, once again with a pencil. 25, another with a pencil. What this does is that I have transferred the correct answer simultaneously into the OMR sheet, but I have given myself the flexibility of realizing that, okay, question number 21's answer is wrong. I've made a mistake. I thought I was sure, but I've made a mistake. So I've given myself that room to be able to change an answer at the end of first iteration. So You mark them simultaneously. You avoid those mistakes that I just mentioned, that you forgot to skip one question that you were to leave, and you mark the bubbles of 10, 11 questions wrong before you realized it. And at the same time, you did not risk filling the questions in the last 5 minutes. You are transferring them simultaneously. You are leaving a gap. You are leaving yourself a flexibility of changing the answers, yet you are not making the mistake of filling the bubbles wrongly, or relying to fill your bubbles in the last 5 minutes. You're not making those mistakes. So what I did was, in the first iteration, I would use pencil to mark those bubbles. After the first iteration, I gave my brain a little bit of a break. How? 1 or 2 minutes of break. How? At the end of first iteration, I would do this with a black pen on the bubbles that were marked with a pencil, without cross-checking them with the booklet, question paper booklet. That is the kind of confidence that you have to have, that okay, I have marked 21 with a pencil now. I have been through the entire paper. I have done one iteration. Now it has been 75 minutes. Let me give my brain a little bit of a break. Just do this with a black pen on every question that you have marked. This is OMR. You have marked this question. Take a black pen and finalize them. This has to be done at the end of first iteration. This will give your brain a little bit of a break, and this will save you from making the mistake of marking the question wrongly and recalling that you have marked it wrong. You can recalling the question incorrectly, answer incorrectly, marking it, and after some time recalling that you have marked the wrong answer. This will also save you from the mistake of relying on last 5 minutes to fill the bubble and in a hurry filling them wrongly. This will give your brain a break before starting the second iteration. So this is what I did while filling the bubbles. And I filled them simultaneously, as well as I filled them in intervals by doing this thing. Both things were achieved by this thing. Then it is a very critical thing, very trivial sounding thing, but very critical thing. It happens. It happened with me in 2018 as well as 19. The first 4-5 questions in my set were environment related and cultural related questions. Now I could not solve 5 questions right away. I'm supposed to solve 85 to 90 questions, so I have a leeway of only 10 to 15 questions, but I could not solve 5 questions right away. 5 out of 5 first questions I could not solve. Don't panic in such a situation. Those 5 might be 5 of the 10 questions that you might eventually leave. Don't panic if this thing happens. What you can do, flip the entire paper and start from the back, or start attempting from question number 50. When you are confident enough, when you have done enough attempts, when you have completed the first iteration satisfactorily, marked 50 to 55 questions, go back to them, start from the front. The second iteration can be started from the front. So don't panic if you are not able to solve 7 to 8 questions in a row. Those just might be the questions that you leave. It's not a big deal. It does not matter whether you leave question number 1 to 10 straight away, or you distribute the questions that you leave throughout the paper. It is as simple as that. Please do not try new techniques in the exam. Do not try to innovate in the exam. I did that when I was solving IIT JEE paper. I used to solve chemistry first, then maths, then physics. But in IIT JEE, some innovation struck my brain. I don't know what I wanted on that day, but I solved chemistry first, then physics, then maths. What happened is that I ended up with 8 marks in the paper 1 maths part. I would solve chemistry, maths and physics in test papers. During the IIT JEE exam, some innovation struck me and I solved chemistry, physics, maths. This was done as pattern in 45 minutes, as it used to be in the test papers. 1.5 hours got spent on this because I was strong in physics. That is why I used to leave it at the last part, because I was strong. I could handle it. But 1.5 hours got wasted in this. Now I'm left with 45 minutes for maths, which was not that comfort area of mine. I'm panicking, flipping from one question to another. What I ended up with is 8 marks in that paper. So that is, by example, I would like to explain that don't do these innovative things in the exam. I corrected my course in the second paper. There used to be 2 papers, then chemistry, maths, then physics. Improved my score. So the total score of maths was good enough, but there I suffered a massive opportunity cost of 15 to 20 marks, and that is what drowned my attempt. Whatever it is, but I gave this example to explain the fact that don't be innovative in the exam. Be as mechanical as possible in the exam. Be innovative in the test papers. Be innovative in the quizzes that you're solving. Do all those experiments and innovations in the test papers, whether it is for mains, whether it is for prelims, whether it is for interview. Try your new techniques in the interviews, in the mains test papers, but don't try to innovate anything in the exam. Let it be as mechanical as possible. If you are able to transplant your mechanical techniques from test papers to the prelims, that is the sign of the fact that your exam is going well. You will probably able to replicate the results of test papers in the prelims. So don't try to innovate things. Try to do things that you have been doing in the test papers and getting good results. If you are not getting good results in tests, change your style, change your content, change your approach. Innovate on it until and unless it starts producing results for you. And when it does, don't temper with it in the exam. Just don't temper with it. Do what has been working for you. Then you have a benchmark of 85 to 90 questions. Okay. That has worked well with you in tests. You have been scoring competitively. Then why do you want to go for glory? No, I will score 160 marks. So I will attempt 100 out of 100 questions. Even though I have been doing well in the test papers. That is just a manifestation of what I just said. Don't do things that you did not do in your test paper. Don't do things in the exam that you did not do in your test paper. You were doing well by attempting 85 to 90 questions. Why do you want to go for glory? What will you gain from it? It might backfire. You might get 160 marks. What will you do with that? It might backfire. All those 15 questions might be the wrong ones. You might lose 10 marks then. What is the point? Do not go for imaginary cutoff. In the exam, don't try to guess the cutoff. You will get an assessment of what the paper is. If you have done enough test papers, enough MCQ quizzes, enough test series, you will be able to assess your competitiveness. Have confidence in the exam. If you are facing toughness in the exam, if you have been competitive in your test papers, if you have been scoring well, if you have been consistently scoring 130 to 140 in your paper, and suddenly during the paper you are feeling that the paper is tougher than your test papers, believe me, have the confidence that if it is tough for you, it will be tough for other candidates as well. I can give you the example. In 2017, the cutoff was 107, right? So it was a relatively easy paper. In 2016, the cutoff was 116. It was quite an easy paper. So expecting from the trend of 2016-17, one would have guessed the cutoff to be somewhere around 108, 107, 106. But the paper was such that the cutoff fell to 97 marks. It means that every candidate out there faced problems, faced challenges in attempting that paper. That paper was quite tough. So a candidate like me, who had done well in the previous prelim, in the previous 2017 prelims, I had done well. So it was natural for me to expect that, okay, if I am feeling the heat in this paper, then other candidates are as well. Don't underestimate yourself. Get a fairly good assessment of your competitiveness from the test papers that you solve, and stick to that competitiveness with confidence. If you are feeling the heat in the paper, so are other candidates. Don't try to push for unnecessary cutoffs. If you are feeling the heat, attempt as per your comfort level. You were competitive while attempting the test. You attempted 85 to 90 questions. Still, if you cannot push to 85 questions, you can go to only 80 questions. Let it be. If you are feeling the heat, if you have been sincere in your preparation, still you are feeling the heat, still you are not able to push to 85 questions, don't go for unnecessary cutoff then. Sometimes the paper might be tough. Work hard, work sincerely, work honestly. If it is tough for you, it is tough for others as well. It is a competitive exam. It is not an absolute exam. You don't have to score 70% marks to clear. You just have to be ahead of your peers. That confidence will come only and only if you have been sincere in your preparation. If you have been sincere, then don't go for imaginary cutoffs. And if you have not been sincere, then be sincere. That is all I can say. Sincerity, discipline, hard work, that is all that can change prelims from being a matter of luck to being a matter of surety. Then test series. Which test series to attempt? How many tests to go for? how to solve test papers. That is very important. My answer to this is you can go for any reputed institute. You can solve any paper. You can solve any test series. There are 30 to 3500 mark papers. You can solve them sincerely and that will be good enough. The only advice is that I would give you is that don't skip from one test series to another, that you solve 15 tests of this institute, 15 tests of that institute. Why I would say that is because test series, test papers, institutes have a way of distributing their current affairs, their polity, history, geography, economic syllabus into different papers. 15 to 20 test papers from 15 to 20 might cover current affairs from XYZ months, 20 to 25 might cover from XYZ months, ABC months. Now what you did was you attempted 15 to 30 serial numbered test papers from a particular institute, and then you attempted 1 to 15 from another institute's test papers. What might happen is that there might be overlaps in the current affairs or in the syllabus that has been covered in those institutes. You might end up over studying certain parts of the syllabus and not being tested on certain parts of the syllabus. So what I would say is that go for any institute's reputed material, cover it end to end. If you cannot cover it end to end, start from the back. There are test number 1 to 35, start from test number 35. But that is for those who have done the syllabus well, who are experienced. Beginners have a little bit hard. They have a little bit hard time figuring out whether I should start from 35, whether I should start from 1. So they can give themselves ample time. They can give 2.5 to even 3 months in their first prelims attempt and solve all the papers. That is what I would advise. How many test series? Solve this many questions however you want to, however way you want to. Solve quizzes on particular websites for the entire year. If you are covering 2 websites, then you have covered X number of questions. Solve test papers for the rest questions to get to 6,000. And if you are going to do partially, solve from paper number 35, then 34, then maybe do 10 papers, cover 1000 questions from there. If you have covered 5000 questions all the year round through various quizzes, then maybe you can just do with 10 full length papers here. So the point is that you have to cover 6000 MCQs. You can distribute it through the year, or you can solve those quizzes in the last couple of months. You can solve those quizzes and test papers in the last couple of months. You can solve them all through the year. My strategy was to solve them all through the year, make notes, and if I have covered 3000 questions through quizzes, I'm left with 3000 questions more. Then start with question paper number 35 and solve 30 papers more. Start from the reverse, start from the latest test, solve backwards to ensure that at the end you have 6000 questions with you. Then how to attempt those test papers? There is a common mistake that people make, that while attempting the test paper, they were sure of only 55 questions. Out of those 55, they got 50 right. They attempted 85 questions, so 30 were guesswork. Okay, out of those, they got 20 right. So they got 10 wrong here, 5 wrong here, and 85 were attempted. 85 were attempted, so 15 were left here. So what they would do is that study those 5 that you got wrong here, study those 10 that you got wrong here, and study those 15. So they would study 30 questions only, solutions to 30 questions only, assuming that this 20 was part of my knowledge. The 20 that I guessed and got right was part of my knowledge. Don't fall into that fallacy. Only 50 were part of your knowledge that you got right in first attempt without any guessing. The rest of the 50 you either got wrong or you guessed or you left. So the minimum effort is that you have to study the solution of those 50 tests. There is no getting around it. There is no negotiation around it. You have to study the solution of those 50 tests. Advisable, desirable, better, sincere way would be to study the solutions of all those 100 tests, all those 100 questions. Why? Because something might have been asked that you knew about that topic, that was the question. But something might be mentioned in the solution that might not have been a question right now but might become a question tomorrow. So if this is the question, if the question comes from the part of the topic that you know, you are fine. But if the question comes from the part of the topic that was part of the solution and not the question, then you will not be able to attempt. So sincerity dictates that you have to read the solution to all the 100 questions. But if you are running short of time, at least have the sincerity to read the solution to 50 questions, right? Why 50? Because either you guessed them and got right, you guessed them and got wrong, you were sure but still you got wrong, or you just left them. So you have to read the solution to 50 questions anyway. So how I would break them down is that 2 hours to attempt the paper, that is non-negotiable, that is how it is. 15 minutes to check the answers, ABCD, checking ABCD, BCD, ADA, it does not take much time. Then 2.5 to 3 hours to read through the entire solution and make notes. So about 5 hours to 5.5 hours get consumed in attempting one test paper thoroughly. Don't put yourself down, don't think less of yourself if you are taking this much time. You can do it in 4 to 4.5 hours also, but it took me this much time. Don't feel bad about yourself if you are taking this much time. As long as you are reviewing all the questions or at least 50 questions and making notes out of those questions, don't put yourself down. You are doing the right thing. Then how to read the atlas? First of all, I told you that the atlas is one of those things that you have to emphasize much more in prelims than in mains. In mains, you can make a vague map and justify what you are saying. But in atlas, you have to have specific knowledge. Questions like, where is the Atlas mountain? Whether Russia and whether Russia and North Korea have a border. These questions come. Which countries have a border? If you go from north to south, what is the order of capitals? If you have to go from Nagaland to Tamil Nadu, how many states you have to cross? Question like that has come. So there is no getting around reading the atlas. And things like that remain in your short-term memory. You cannot recall those things all the year round, neither do you have to, nor are they part of the mains answers. In mains, it is hardly the answer that Russia and North Korea share a border. It does not really matter that much. But in prelims, it is 2 marks. 2 marks that you could have gotten at the first sight in your very first iteration, increasing your confidence, increasing your surety of clearing the exam. Similarly, it is about the river courses. Mekong passes through which countries? Sometimes river courses form the borders between countries. So what you do is, while reading the atlas, have a red pen in your hand. Mark the river course like this. Or have a highlighter in your hand. Highlight the river course. So when you are reading the atlas subsequently, when you are revising it, maybe using it for the next attempt, you don't have to do all the hard work right from the start. You don't have to figure out, okay, this river is going like this and it goes like this. You just have it marked with a red pen. It increases the speed of revising things. That is how you read a lot of things, commit a lot of things to short-term memory without actually spending a lot of time for it. And that is how cumulative effort of previous attempts helps in the subsequent attempts. That is how you reduce the time for preparation for prelims from 2 months exclusive, 3 months exclusive to 1 month exclusive. You have these things already marked. You have short notes already made. Same is the case for countries. What I did was that we have a map of India. So I marked out even the borders of the states with a red pen. These kind of things I did with a red pen. So whenever subsequently I am revising or reviewing, just 1 minute it would take and I would review the borders. Just 1 minute, not more than 1 minute. Same goes for the seas and dams and mountain peaks. In the atlas, it is written, triangles like this are made and name is written. So you can just highlight it so that you don't have to do the effort of figuring out which mountain peak is where over and over again while you are revising subsequently. Just highlight it, go through the highlighted things. It becomes much easier, much expedited. For this, for recalling which city or capital or sea is in north or south, which island is in north or south, I would do this. There is this atlas, there are 2 pages, there are margins. In the margin, I would write these trends. So during my subsequent attempts, during my subsequent revisions, I do not have to figure out the pattern. Okay, this city is slightly in the north latitude, this is slightly in the south latitude, this is the order. I would just revise this order without even paying any attention to the map. Just revise this text that is written on the side. And that is how you make notes out of things for last minute revision. You can't figure out trends and pattern in the last minute. You can't spend time with that. You are flipping through the atlas. What you do is that look at this only. Forget about this. What I mean is that you look at this text written only. Forget about the things that have been marked. That, okay, this city is there, this city is there, it is marked in the atlas, that has been printed in the atlas. Forget about what is printed in the atlas. Just look what you have read. And if this is not enough, you can staple pages here. What I would say that same thing is the continuation, that okay, you have to prepare for prelims exclusively for 1 to 2 months, but that does not change the fact that it has to be prepared for all the year long. How did I prepare for it all the year long? 6,000 MCQs distributed all throughout the year, plus making notes of those MCQs, as well as your current affairs notes for prelims. You are reading them, reading the current affairs books, reading the current affairs sources, making notes. This has to be done all the year long. You have a separate note made called reports. Whatever report comes in news, whatever you read as a report that this report has been published recently, this is a theme of that report, you put it in your notes. You might not have to revise it every week, it is not necessary, it has to be committed into short-term memory. But such notes have to be made all the year long. This is what I mean when I say that it is not a preparation of 1 to 2 months, it is a preparation of the entire year. But the things have to be committed in short-term memory, but in the last 1 to 2 months. But the notes that will be used to commit things to short-term memory can be made all the year long. They don't have to be necessarily read, but they can be made all the year round. And they can be read 1 to 2 months before the exam. Not reading the exam appropriately. What I mean is that not reading the question appropriately. Not revising. Read the book once, thought it was pretty easy. See, realize that in this exam, no content is tough. They are not going to ask you the theory of relativity. They're not going to ask you rocket science. Maybe in optional they might, but in GS or essay or prelims or even interview, they're not going to ask you rocket science. So what you have to read will be quite intuitive, quite logical, and quite easy to understand when you're reading it for the first time. But you might not be able to recall those things at the day of the exam. Whatever it happened with me in JEE as well. When I read a topic, I reached its peak. I was able to solve the toughest questions. I was able to solve the JEE questions very easily. I thought like, okay, I'm solving the JEE questions, it is quite easy. But what happens is that when sufficient time has passed after you read that topic, you fall down from that peak of expertise in that topic, and you end up attempting the topic with less level of expertise than you had at the time of studying the topic. Let this not happen to you. Revise multiple times. Nothing is tough in this exam. It is just the volume and the management. So you have to be smart and tricky about it. I've already emphasized not doing tests. What will happen is that you will not cover the questions, you will not cover the MCQs, you will not be able to make those notes, and then you will not be able to revise properly. Please don't fool yourself into believing that the textbooks that have been prescribed in the book list are sufficient. I think it is 50% part of the preparation. Why? Because things come in news. When there is something in the news, the static background of that also becomes a part of the preparation. It might not be a part of the standard books, and that is what these 6,000 MCQs enable you to cover. What is in the news? What is the static background of what is in the news? They might not be the part of the book, but that is what you will need to cover, and that is what these MCQs enable you to cover. Not doing the test properly, I discussed that a while ago, that you had 50 questions correct with surety, and you revised or read the solution to only 30 questions that you either got wrong or you left. Out of the 50 questions that you were not sure of, you got 20 questions correct by guessing, and you thought, no, they are part of my knowledge, I got them right. No. Doing the test properly, spending 5 to 5.5 hours attempting them, checking them, reading the entire solution, making notes. Skipping between test series, I already mentioned that 15 test papers from this coaching, 15 test papers from that coaching. That is not the right way to go. Try to cover one coaching's test series completely. If you don't have the time, start from the latest test and work backwards. Why? The initial tests are little bit easier. They cover only one topic, mostly, for most coachings. Either it is a polity based test, or it is a science based test, or it is an economy based test. But in the subsequent tests, test number 35, 34, 31, they cover mostly the entire syllabus, and the level is also a little bit advanced. What I mean by cost benefit, don't pick up new material in the 1 to 2 months before the exam. And then assigning too much weightage to the luck factor. Oh, prelims is such a matter of luck, it might happen. Some people who cleared for IRS, in the next time they could not clear the prelims. Don't indulge in these discussions, don't give yourself excuses. I say about this that the harder you work, the luckier you get. It is a matter of luck. Luck is a part of life that cannot be denied. But If you're working hard, you become more lucky. If you're working harder, you become more lucky. Then time management. See, the idea of time management is that how much time will you devote to which topic? How much time will you devote exclusively to prelims preparation? That depends on the stage of the exam you are in. If it is your first attempt, you might end up devoting more time for prelims preparation exclusively. If it is your second, third attempt, you already have your notes made. You already have a standard list of reports published by various organizations. If it is your third attempt, you already have things marked out in the atlas, so you can condense your time. It depends on your knowledge base. If it is your second, third attempt, you already know several organizations. You already know the structure of them. You know the structure of Monetary Policy Committee. You know the functions. You know the structure of FSDC. You know the standard bodies of UN. So you can condense your time. You can skip a little bit. You can skip while making your notes. You already know something, so you can exclude them out of your notes. Then it depends on the number of your attempt. These things directly affect the number of your attempt. But the basic idea is that you have to do justice with every part of the syllabus. My point being that you don't like geography. I didn't like geography. It was the speed breaker for me. Everything is going well. I study history, economy, polity. As soon as I got to geography, my speed broke. So it does not matter. The idea is that if it is a part of the syllabus, you have to study. You have to manage your time in such a way, manage your content in such a way that you are able to study subjects you are less interested in at a time when you are most motivated. Don't try to take up geography in the night or as the last subject you study. Study it in the morning when you are fresh. That is how you manage time, and don't try to skimp out on subjects. Every subject is important because at the end of the day, it is a competitive exam. It does not matter where you get the 2 marks from. You have to get those 2 marks in every question. So do justice with every topic. Try to make yourself competitive in every topic as much as possible. There are some topics in which I advise you to focus less. For example, art and culture, because cost benefit is not less. So in general, people are weaker in art and culture. It does not mean you have to have the same level of expertise in every topic, but assess the level of competition. If people are comfortable in economy, generally most people are comfortable in polity, then if geography is pretty straightforward, I mean there is standard content, there is atlas, then don't be uncompetitive in the topics where people are competitive. Mostly people are competitive. Don't be uncompetitive in standard scoring topics like history, geography, polity, economy, current affairs. These are the things that you should prepare. These are the things that you should work hard. But then there are topics like art and culture, which are a little bit of a wild card in the exam. So don't spend too much time on it. Assess your performance in competition with the crowd that you are attempting the paper with, and be competitive that way, and manage your time to increase your competitiveness. That is what I would say about time management and doing justice with every topic. I said doing justice with every topic does not mean spending equal time on every topic. Spending the time that the topic deserves, and that you will figure out based on doing test papers repetitively. Then get marks wherever we can get them from. The same thing I emphasize, that 2 marks have to be gotten wherever they can be gotten from. But then you have to spend your time selectively and competitively. Don't spend too much time on topics where the cost benefit is not favorable. Spend time on topics where the cost benefit is favorable for other candidates, but you are not good enough. Then spend time. Be competitive. That is what I would say. Then take small breaks. The idea is that you might take a break of 3 hours during the entire day. But don't fool yourself into thinking that I'll study for 3 hours, I'll take a break for 3 hours, I'll maybe watch a couple of movies, then I'll study for 12 hours straight. That is not how it works. You eat 3 meals a day, right? Similarly, your brain needs recreation in short bouts, in multiple bouts distributed across the day. You can use those recreations as incentive to make yourself perform better. You performed well, give yourself a break. Give yourself a positive reinforcement. Very long breaks will break your momentum. What will happen is that for me 30 to 35 minutes or 25 minutes break was the optimum. If we went to 2 to 3 hours, then the level of freshness did not change. It did not improve. I was as fresh at the end of 3 hours as I was at 35 minutes. And if it went to 4 to 5 hours, then that entire day's motivation is lost. What happens is that I start feeling, okay, this day is gone, let us take a break for the day and then we'll study tomorrow. No, don't let that happen unless and until it is a planned break day. You can take a day's break, nothing wrong with that, but don't let that day's break be an unplanned one. You can take a me day once in 15 days, you can take a break of an entire day, but don't let a 20 to 25 minute break, an intermediate break between two topics, turn into an entire day's break. I would like to explain it a little bit slightly more. Here is the time on this axis. Here is the level of freshness that you get. So basically my idea is that there is an inverted U relationship between the amount of freshness and time. This is 25 to 30 minutes. This is the optimum level. This is 25-30 minutes. This is the optimum level and this is 25 to 30 minutes. Now if you spend 2 to 3 hours, it does not help you much. You are at the same level of freshness that you were at the end of 25 to 30 minutes. And if you go beyond, you spend 4 to 5 hours, your entire day's motivation is lost. Your level of freshness reduces. That is what happened with me. So figure out your own working style, figure out your own understanding of how breaks affect you, how you need breaks, and that is a part of time management. Like I mentioned, even a break can be a productive activity. You want a break after having a meal for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Revise, read 5, 10 reports. Revise, read 5, 10 themes. Complete 1 page or maybe half a page of those 1 pointer notes you made. Right? How do you manage stress? It is extremely important for any aspirant of any exam. You can exercise, you can run, you can do crunches, you can walk after the dinner. Have a support system, talk to friends, family, peer, mentors, those friends who have been selected in services, and well-wishers, people who genuinely want good things for you. Talk to them whenever you are feeling stressed, whenever you are feeling anxious, depression, frustration, anxiety. Talk to these people. If that does not help, you can even go for professional help, and the professional can decide whether you need a medication or not. Don't attach a taboo with these things. The more you talk about these things, the less stress becomes. Then at the end of the day, I would say work smart and hard. I already emphasized how you can cover 50 pages of one topic or 10 pages of 5 topics, thereby covering cumulatively the same volume of material at the end of 10 to 15 days, but enhancing the productivity of your brain. Switch between topics, not just for prelims, but also for mains. Read newspaper for a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours, then read GS and then read optional. Switch between topics. That will enhance your productivity, that will enhance your interest, it will enhance your motivation, it will reduce your boredom, and you will have spent the same amount of time in front of books, but the output that you get will be more, your concentration will be more. There are several videos and exercises that you can do to enhance short-term memory, picture memory, image memory can be used. These things will help you to get more output of the same amount of time. Lastly, I would like to emphasize that you can know, I would like to rather re-emphasize that you can know that you will clear this exam even before the answer copy is handed over to you. You just have to work hard enough. Thank you.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civil's Daily.